Minister, of course, you'd be watching right now as relations between Australia and China continue to worsen. Given the experience that Taiwan has as well, what are your thoughts on what you're seeing and how Australia might handle this moment?
Well, it's truly unfortunate that China has been trying to use trade as a weapon against Australia. And the way I see it is that Australia has many good friends among the like-minded countries. And when Australia has been targeted on, I think that like-minded countries need to look at it in a more serious manner and try to act together. And as I said a little bit earlier, we are stronger together. And we shouldn't allow China to, conduct that kind of warfare against Australia. And of course, the best way for Taiwan and Australia to have good relations with each other will be for the two sides to negotiate and to have the ECA, the Economic Cooperation Agreement, with each other. And these kinds of cooperation in between Taiwan and Australia would work in bilateral interest. And in Taiwan, we have been facing the threats of China for decades. And for us, the best strategy to deal with the Chinese demand or Chinese threat is just to prepare ourselves for the possible onslaught. And we should not think, at least from Taiwan's perspective, that we need China. Once we start thinking that we need China, and China will continue to mount its pressure on Taiwan, and it's not going to work in our favor.
Australia is battling for survival. But why? Well, the tension between Taiwan and China is heating up. And guess who seems to be getting pulled into the mix? Australia. So Australia is in a bit of a tricky situation, like walking on a tightrope. They're super connected to China when it comes to the economy, but at the same time, they've got to be careful not to compromise their own interest and security. And in case you're wondering, how did all this start? The whole thing goes way back to a big fight China and Taiwan had back in the day, starting in 1927. The nationalists and the communists were going at it, and in 1949, the nationalists ended up retreating to Taiwan after getting beaten by the communists. So basically, the Civil War paused, but never really got a proper ending. Also, Taiwan and China have been going back and forth about who gets to call the shots on the island. China sees Taiwan as this rebellious little sibling that needs to come back home and be part of the mainland again. But Taiwan doesn't see it that way. They're all about being their own bosses, with their own government, army, and rules. Now, how and why did Australia get involved? Australia is jumping into the mix because they've got a pretty solid bond with Taiwan. They're all connected through trade, investments, education, tourism, and good old people-to-people relationships. Taiwan is actually Australia's 12th biggest trading partner and the 14th largest place where they sell their stuff. But that's not all. Australia also has this strategic alliance with the United States. They're like BFFs, and the US has this law called the Taiwan Relations Act from way back in 1979, which basically says they'll have Taiwan's back if China tries anything sneaky. They see Taiwan as a shining example of democracy and a super important partner in the Indo-Pacific area. They're really not digging China's moves, like putting military pressure on Taiwan and isolating them diplomatically. It's a whole mess that threatens peace and stability in the region, and Australia and the US are not cool with it. So in short, Australia's got its own interest with Taiwan, and they're teaming up with the US to make sure Taiwan doesn't get messed with. They want things to stay peaceful and stable in the neighborhood. So Australia is in a bit of a pickle here. They know that China is a big deal when it comes to the economy and strategic stuff. But at the same time, they're also aware that China's growing power can mess with the global order they believe in. Australia's like, hey, we want to get along with both China and Taiwan. But there's this one China rule that says Beijing is the only legit government of China. And Australia's like, alright, we respect that. It's a tough balancing act for Australia. But they're doing their best to keep everyone happy while sticking to their own values. But what danger do China and its territorial ambitions pose for Australia? China is causing some major headaches for Australia in the Indo-Pacific region. It's like they have these big ambitions, and it's giving Australia a serious challenge. In the Indo-Pacific area, Australia faces a complex and uncertain strategic environment, with China's growing assertiveness and coercion posing substantial threats to Australia's national interest and values. China is Australia's largest commercial partner, but it also poses the country's most serious national security risk. China is causing trouble for Australia in different ways. They're launching cyber attacks, meddling in Australian institutions, imposing trade sanctions, and flexing their military muscles in the South China Sea. It's like they're playing a sneaky game to undermine Australia's security and interest. Australia needs to stay alert and find ways to handle these challenges. Some smart folks say China's military is growing crazy fast. They're not afraid to show it off. They're making bold moves in the South China Sea, Southeast Asia, and even the Pacific. It's like they're flexing their muscles, and it's making Australia feel a bit uneasy. China's rapid military growth and its bold actions are a threat to Australia's security and the whole global order thingy. It's like China is shaking things up and not playing by the rules. Also, China's got its eyes on Taiwan. It's like they really want to take over that self-governing island. But guess what? The United States and its allies, including Australia, are like, hold up, we're not going to let that slide. It's a big deal because if China tries to invade Taiwan, it could start a major conflict with the US and its allies. And things have gotten a lot more tense lately. China's been getting all feisty with Taiwan. They've been sending their fancy warplanes to buzz around in Taiwan's airspace and flexing their naval muscles near Taiwan's waters. It's like they're trying to show off their military mojo. China's not just bossing around Taiwan, they're warning other countries too. They're like, hey Australia and everyone else, don't you dare mess with us by getting cozy with Taiwan. It's our business, got it? They're trying to isolate Taiwan while warning everyone else to stay out of their business. Tensions are rising, and the drama is real. And Taiwan, they're not just sitting around twiddling their thumbs while China causes trouble. They're like, hey, we're not taking this lightly. Taiwan is all about beefing up its defense game. They want to make sure they can protect themselves and their awesome democracy. They're also reaching out to other international friends for some support and recognition. They even asked Australia for some extra help. They want to share intel and team up on security stuff, just in case things get really messy with China. It's like they're getting ready for a potential showdown. Now, Australia is not sitting on the sidelines either. They're showing some concern about China's actions, and they're totally backing Taiwan's right to be part of the global gang. But at the same time, they're like, hey both sides, let's keep it cool and sort things out peacefully. So, if China were to use force against Taiwan, Australia could face a difficult choice between supporting its ally or avoiding a confrontation with its largest trading partner. We can only hope they can find a peaceful solution without any major meltdowns. What exactly is the issue in the South China Sea? China's got this huge claim in the South China Sea, and they've drawn this U-shaped line on the map. They're playing a giant game of connect the dots. They say that line represents their historical rights and control over most of the area. But here's the thing. International law, like the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, doesn't quite agree with that claim. And that's not all. China's been doing some interesting stuff in the South China Sea. They're building these artificial islands and military bases in places like Spratly and Paracel Islands. China says it's all for peaceful purposes and within their rights, but other countries see it as China trying to take control and shake things up. It's like they're playing a game of risk with real-world consequences. And what's China's main ambition in the South China Sea? China's got a major goal in the South China Sea, and that's to reclaim Taiwan. They see Taiwan as this rebel province that needs to come back and unite with the mainland. But Taiwan has a different idea. Now here's the twist. Taiwan also claims a big chunk of the South China Sea based on the same map China is using. But Taiwan has been more open to talking and working things out with other countries in the area. What's Quad doing about it? The Quad, officially the Quadrilateral Security Dialogue, is a group of 4 countries: the United States, Australia, India, and Japan. The Quad seeks to foster a free, open, and prosperous Indo-Pacific area in which disagreements are settled amicably and without coercion. The Quad also wants to work together on topics including maritime security, counterterrorism, cybersecurity, climate change, health, and humanitarian aid. The Quad is concerned about China's increasing assertiveness and violence in the region, particularly its efforts to force and threaten Taiwan, which it regards as a renegade province that must eventually reconnect with the mainland. The Quad's got Taiwan's back in a big way. They're all about supporting Taiwan's security and democracy. How? Well, they're doing some cool stuff together. First off, they're flexing their naval muscles with joint exercises. They're also into this freedom of navigation thing. They want to make sure everyone can sail around without any trouble. The Quad wants Taiwan to have a voice on the global stage. They're all about getting Taiwan involved in international organizations like the World Health Organization. They want Taiwan to have a seat at the table and contribute its ideas and expertise. So yeah, the Quad is like the backup squad for Taiwan. They're challenging China's moves, supporting Taiwan's international presence, and making it clear that Taiwan's not alone. Oh, and they're even cheering for Taiwan to join cool agreements like the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for the Trans-Pacific Partnership. What about the US and West? What will be their reaction in the event of a war in Asia? So here's the deal. If a war breaks out in Asia, the US and the West would step in. But it all depends on the situation and who's involved. They're not going to sit back and watch things go crazy. Their first move would be to prevent or calm down any conflict that could mess up the region's stability and global trade. They're all about keeping things in check and in peace. They're into talking things out and following international rules. They want disputes to be resolved peacefully, like using the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. It's like they're saying, let's have a chat and sort things out without going all crazy. So if a war goes down in Asia, the US and the West are going to step in, protect their allies, and do their best to keep things calm and peaceful. It's all about maintaining stability and playing by the rules. But Australia can't just rely on its allies and partners to protect its interests and values. It needs to take charge and strengthen its defense capabilities, trade diversification, cybersecurity, critical infrastructure, democratic institutions, and social cohesion. By investing in its own resilience and sovereignty, Australia can be better prepared to navigate challenges and safeguard what's important. Let's know what you think in the comment section. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to stay up to date on the latest news about what's happening in the world today. Thanks for watching.